There were healers who lived by the sea, not in the great cities, not in the temples or the courts of pharaohs, along the coastlines, in the small villages where the water was always visible and the smell of salt was part of every breath. These coastal healers understood something about fish that the inland world has largely forgotten. That not all fish are the same. That some fish fed the body at the deepest level, building the brain, protecting the heart, maintaining the joints and the vision and the vitality well into old age. And that some fish, despite being widely consumed, despite being sold in every market and eaten at every table, were quietly doing harm, accumulating in the body, inflaming what should be calm, delivering poisons that no amount of cooking could remove. These coastal healers lived past 100 in communities where that was considered normal, not exceptional, normal. The physicians who studied these communities in ancient Japan, in ancient Greece, along the Mediterranean, in the coastal fishing villages of ancient India, all arrived at the same observation. The fish these people ate was specific, intentional, chosen with the same care that a healer chooses a remedy. And the fish they avoided, equally specific, equally intentional. They knew which side of this list kept them strong and which side made people sick. Today, I am going to share both sides with you. 5 fish that ancient healers ate regularly, that protected the heart, the brain, the joints, and the vision across a lifetime. And 5 fish they warned against, that accumulate toxins, trigger inflammation, and quietly undermine the health of everyone who eats them regularly. In ancient Japan, the concept of food as medicine was so deeply embedded in coastal culture that fishing communities developed their own traditions of healing that were completely distinct from inland medicine. They observed, over generations, what happened to people who ate certain fish daily. They watched the quality of skin, hair, and joints in old age. They noted who maintained their vision longest, who kept their minds sharpest into their 80s and 90s, who recovered fastest from illness. The answer was always the same. The people who ate small, cold water, oily fish daily or near daily aged differently from those who did not. They aged more slowly, more gracefully, more completely. Ancient Greek physicians who treated the wealthy of the Mediterranean made similar observations. They noted that fishermen who ate their own catch daily, particularly the small silverfish pulled from cold, deep water, showed a vitality in old age that their land-dwelling patients rarely achieved. They prescribed these fish. They wrote about them. They recommended them to patients with joint pain, with poor vision, with the foggy thinking of advancing years. What those ancient observers were noticing, without the language to explain it, was the effect of omega-3 fatty acids, of EPA and DHA, of the specific proteins, minerals, and anti-inflammatory compounds found in abundance in certain fish and almost entirely absent in others. They observed the result. We now understand the mechanism. Both point in exactly the same direction. Here are the 5 fish ancient healers ate, and the 5 they warned against. The first fish ancient coastal healers ate, and the one that appeared most consistently in every longevity tradition from Japan to the Mediterranean, was the smallest and most humble fish in the sea: sardines. Ancient Greek and Roman physicians specifically prescribed sardines for patients with joint inflammation, with poor vision, with the mental decline that crept in as people aged. They observed that communities who ate sardines daily maintained their physical and mental capacities to ages that were remarkable, even by today's standards. Sardines are the single most nutritionally complete fish available to the human body. In one small tin, or a handful of fresh sardines, you receive more omega-3 fatty acids than in almost any other food, more calcium than a glass of milk, more vitamin D than most people receive in an entire week from any other source, more coenzyme Q10, the compound the heart uses to generate energy, than in any other commonly available food. They are small. They live short lives. They feed on plankton. This means they accumulate almost none of the mercury and toxins that larger, longer-lived fish carry in their tissue. Ancient healers called them the fish of the long life. They were not being poetic. They were describing what they saw in the people who ate them. Eat sardines 2 to 3 times per week, fresh when available, preserved in olive oil when not. The bones, soft enough to eat, are among the richest sources of calcium and phosphorus in any food. Do not remove them. The ancients never did. The second fish was the one that ancient Japanese coastal healers specifically identified as the food most responsible for the extraordinary longevity of their fishing communities: mackerel. Japanese physicians of the ancient period wrote extensively about the relationship between mackerel consumption and what they called brain clarity in old age. They observed that the eldest and sharpest members of fishing communities ate mackerel in various traditional preparations almost daily. They made a connection that modern neuroscience has now confirmed with extraordinary precision. The brain is approximately 60% fat. The specific fat it uses most, the fat that forms the membranes of every neuron, that enables the rapid transmission of signals, that maintains the structural integrity of brain tissue, is DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. Mackerel contains more DHA per serving than almost any other commonly eaten fish. When consumed regularly, particularly from middle age onward, it literally feeds the brain the raw material it needs to maintain itself. People who eat mackerel regularly show measurably slower rates of cognitive decline with age. They maintain their memory, their processing speed, their ability to learn and adapt, because the brain is receiving what it needs to do these things. Ancient Japanese healers did not know about DHA, but they watched the faces and the minds of the people who ate mackerel, and they saw the difference. Eat mackerel once or twice per week, grilled, baked, or prepared simply. The ancients prepared it with ginger and citrus, both of which increase the absorption of its essential fats. The third fish was one that ancient Mediterranean healers specifically prescribed for patients with heart weakness, for the kind of slow cardiac decline that ancient physicians could detect in the pulse long before it became a crisis. Wild salmon. Ancient coastal communities of the northern Mediterranean and the northern European Atlantic coasts observed that salmon was different from other fish in ways they could measure in their patients. They noted that people who ate salmon regularly had stronger pulses, more resilient hearts, less of the joint stiffness that came with age. They prescribed it specifically for patients they described as having tired blood, people whose hearts beat with less force than they should, whose blood seemed to move sluggishly through limbs that had lost their warmth and vitality. Wild salmon contains a compound called astaxanthin, the pigment that gives it its distinctive pink color. Astaxanthin is one of the most powerful antioxidants ever identified in any food. It protects the heart muscle directly. It reduces oxidative damage to the arterial walls. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and protects neurological tissue. It also contains the highest concentration of omega-3 fatty acids of any commonly available fish, reducing triglycerides, reducing arterial inflammation, reducing the stiffness in blood vessel walls that builds silently over decades. The ancient healers prescribed it for the heart. Modern science prescribes it for the same reason. Wild salmon, not farmed. The distinction matters, and I will explain exactly why in the second half of this teaching. Once or twice per week, prepared simply, with lemon and herbs, as the ancients always prepared it. The fourth fish was the one that ancient Arab physicians of the Golden Age specifically associated with the health of the eyes, with maintaining clear vision well past the age when most people expected their sight to fail. Anchovies. Ancient Arab healers who studied the relationship between diet and the aging of the eyes documented anchovies as the food most associated with long, clear vision in their patients. They prescribed anchovy oil specifically for patients experiencing the gradual dimming and narrowing of vision that came with age. They were describing, centuries before any understanding of retinal biochemistry, the effect of DHA and EPA on the photoreceptors of the retina. The retina is the most metabolically active tissue in the body. It requires enormous amounts of DHA to function correctly. When DHA falls, when the diet no longer provides what the retina needs, vision begins to decline. Anchovies are one of the most concentrated sources of omega-3 fatty acids per gram of any fish on Earth. They are small. They are oily. They are intensely flavored, which is why ancient coastal cuisines used them not as a main dish, but as a foundation, crushed into sauces, stirred into cooking, added in small amounts to everything. This was not simply for flavor. It was medicine, integrated into daily food. Use anchovies as the ancient Mediterranean cooks used them, not as a feature, but as a foundation. Added to olive oil, to sauces, to the base of cooked dishes. A small amount every day, rather than a large amount occasionally, is exactly how the ancients prescribed them. The fifth fish in the ancient healers' prescribed list was one specifically recommended for its unique combination of protein quality, mineral content, and anti-inflammatory properties. Herring. Northern European coastal healing traditions, the Viking traditions, the ancient Baltic fishing communities, the North Sea coastal healers, all placed herring at the absolute center of their understanding of health and longevity. They observed that communities in which herring was eaten daily, preserved in various ways to be available throughout the year, showed remarkable resistance to the bone deterioration and joint disease that affected inland populations. Old fishermen who had eaten herring all their lives moved and worked with a suppleness that their age should not have permitted. Herring contains the complete profile of omega-3 fatty acids, alongside an exceptional concentration of vitamin D, the vitamin that regulates calcium absorption, that maintains bone density, that regulates the immune system and the inflammatory response. In the northern latitudes, where sunlight was scarce for months at a time, where vitamin D from the sun was simply unavailable, herring was the primary source of this essential nutrient for entire populations. The communities that ate it daily survived the winter with their bones and their immunity intact. Those who did not showed the inevitable deterioration of vitamin D deficiency. Ancient northern healers called herring the winter medicine. They preserved it, smoked it, fermented it, pickled it. Every preservation method in their tradition designed to make this fish available year-round, because they understood that it could not be safely replaced. Eat herring once or twice per week. In any traditional preparation, smoked, pickled, grilled, or fresh. It is one of the most affordable and most overlooked healing foods on Earth. Now, the other side of the list. The 5 fish that ancient healers warned against.
Not because fish is harmful, but because these specific fish, for reasons that modern science has now fully explained, accumulate toxins, deliver inflammation, and quietly undermine the health of those who eat them regularly. The first fish that ancient healers warned against was one whose danger was observed long before it could be explained. Swordfish. Ancient healers in coastal Mediterranean communities documented that communities who ate large predatory fish, particularly swordfish, with the same frequency as they ate small, oily fish, did not show the same longevity benefits. They observed that something in the large fish was different, that it did not heal in the same way, that in some patients it seemed to cause a heaviness, a fogginess, a deterioration that could not be explained by other factors. They were describing mercury poisoning without the language to name it. Swordfish is one of the most mercury-contaminated fish in the ocean. It lives for decades. It sits at the top of the marine food chain. Every smaller fish it consumes contributes its mercury load to the swordfish's tissue. Over a lifetime of feeding, a swordfish accumulates mercury concentrations that are among the highest of any commonly eaten fish. Mercury is a neurotoxin. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It damages the nervous system. In high concentrations, it causes tremors, memory loss, cognitive decline. In the lower concentrations that come from regular dietary consumption, it contributes to the inflammation, the neurological fog, and the gradual deterioration that people attribute to age, but that is, in significant part, the cumulative effect of heavy metal accumulation. Ancient healers did not eat swordfish regularly. There was a reason. The second fish on the warning list was one that has become among the most commonly consumed fish in the modern world, and one that ancient healers who encountered its wild form specifically distinguished from what they called the diseased version kept in enclosed waters. Farmed salmon. Ancient healers understood the difference between fish that lived freely in cold, moving water, eating what they were designed to eat, swimming as they were designed to swim, and fish that were confined, overcrowded, and fed substances foreign to their nature. They would not have recognized farmed salmon as the same food as wild salmon. And they would have been right. Farmed salmon contains significantly higher concentrations of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, than wild salmon. PCBs are persistent organic pollutants that accumulate in fatty tissue, disrupt hormonal function, and are associated with increased cancer risk. Farmed salmon is fed fish meal and fish oil that concentrates these contaminants. It is kept in crowded net pens where disease spreads rapidly, leading to the widespread use of antibiotics and pesticides that remain in the flesh at the time of consumption. The omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in farmed salmon is dramatically worse than in wild salmon, because the feed it receives is not what salmon evolved to eat. Eat wild salmon. Avoid farmed when possible. If wild is not available in your region, choose sardines, mackerel, herring, or anchovies instead. You will receive more of what the body needs and none of what it does not. The third fish that ancient healers warned against was one specifically associated by ancient Chinese coastal physicians with the accumulation of internal heat. Their description of the chronic low-grade inflammation that modern medicine now recognizes as the underlying driver of most chronic disease. Tilapia. Ancient Chinese coastal healers specifically distinguished between fish that cooled and calmed the body's inflammatory responses and fish that increased internal heat. Their observations, made entirely through the lens of patient outcomes rather than biochemistry, mapped almost perfectly onto what we now understand about the omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid ratio in different fish. Tilapia has one of the worst omega-3 to omega-6 ratios of any commonly eaten fish. It contains almost no omega-3 fatty acids, the anti-inflammatory fats the body needs. It is relatively high in omega-6 fatty acids, which in excess promote the inflammatory pathways that drive heart disease, joint disease, and cognitive decline. Farmed tilapia, which is almost all tilapia available in most markets, is fed corn and soy rather than the aquatic plants and algae that comprise its natural diet.
This dramatically worsens its already poor fatty acid profile. It is not that tilapia is poisonous. It is that eating it regularly, in place of the genuinely healing fish on the first list, represents a significant missed opportunity. And in excess, the inflammatory fatty acid profile it delivers actively works against the health that the ancient healers spent their lives building and protecting. The fourth fish that ancient healers warned against was one that coastal healers across the Mediterranean and the Arab world specifically associated with digestive weakness and the slow accumulation of what they described as toxic residue in the body. King mackerel, distinct from the Atlantic mackerel on the recommended list. The distinction matters. Atlantic mackerel is small, short-lived, and clean. King mackerel is a large predatory fish that lives long enough to accumulate significant mercury and other heavy metals in its tissue. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration specifically advises pregnant women and children to avoid king mackerel entirely because of its mercury content. For everyone else, regular consumption means regular mercury exposure that accumulates in the nervous system over time. Ancient healers observed that large predatory fish from warm waters behaved differently in the body than small, cold water fish. They noted that patients who ate them frequently showed different patterns of health than those who stuck to the small, oily fish of their tradition. They did not know about methylmercury, but they noticed the difference in their patients, and they adjusted their prescriptions accordingly. The fifth and final fish that ancient healers warned against is perhaps the most controversial on this list, because it is one of the most widely farmed and consumed fish in the world today. Pangasius, also sold as basa, swai, or Vietnamese catfish. This fish did not exist in ancient healing traditions. It is a product of modern industrial aquaculture. But the principles that ancient healers applied to fish selection apply directly to it. Pangasius is farmed in extremely high densities in river systems that carry significant industrial and agricultural contamination. Studies of Pangasius sold in European and North American markets have found traces of polyphosphates used to increase water content and weight, residues of malachite green, an antifungal banned in food production, residues of antibiotics given to prevent the disease that spreads rapidly in overcrowded aquaculture systems. It is cheap. It is widely available. It is sold under many different names that obscure its origin. Ancient healers would have recognized it immediately for what it is: a fish raised in conditions of stress and disease, fed substances foreign to its nature, carrying in its tissue the record of everything it was exposed to. They would not have prescribed it. They would have reached for sardines instead. 2 lists. 5 fish the ancient healers ate. Sardines, mackerel, wild salmon, anchovies, herring. 5 fish they warned against. Swordfish, farmed salmon, tilapia, king mackerel, Pangasius. The principle behind both lists is the same one that guided all ancient healing. Eat what the body was designed to receive. Avoid what accumulates, inflames, and deceives. The coastal healers who lived past 100 did not achieve that longevity by accident. They did not eat randomly and hope for the best. They made choices, deliberate, repeated, informed choices, informed by centuries of observation about what these foods did to the bodies of the people who ate them. You have that same knowledge now. The choice is the same one it has always been. What do you put on your plate? What message do you send your body? Start with one change. If swordfish or farmed salmon appears regularly in your diet, replace it once this week with sardines or mackerel. That one replacement delivers more omega-3 than most people receive in an entire week from their current diet. Then make it twice a week. Then 3 times. The coastal healers built their longevity 1 meal at a time. So can you. If this gave you something useful today, share it with one person whose health you want to protect. A parent, a friend, someone who eats fish regularly but has never been told which fish to choose. The healers always shared what they knew. That is exactly how this knowledge survived for thousands of years. Subscribe to Ancient Body Wisdom and come back every single week, because there is so much more they knew, and we are only just beginning. I will see you in the next one.